The gospel day is nothing else but the dawning of that great universal day in the text, wherein God will make one glorious church of Jew and Gentile. The day star whereof is now risen in our horizon, so that I am humbly confident that the same shore shall not bound this covenant, which bound the two now covenanting nations. But, as it is said of the gospel, so it will be verified of this gospel covenant, quote, the sound thereof will go into all the earth, and the words of it to the ends of the world, unquote. There is a spirit of prophecy that doth animate this covenant, which will make it swift and active. Swift to run, quote, his word runs very swiftly, unquote, and active, to work deliverance and safety, not only to these two kingdoms, but of all other Christian churches groaning under, or in danger of, the yoke of anti-Christian tyranny, whom God shall persuade to join in the same, or like, association and covenant. So that, methinks, all that travail with the psalmist's desire, quote, of seeing the good of God's chosen, and rejoicing in the gladness of his nation, and glorying with his inheritance, unquote, will certainly rejoice in this day, and in the goodness of God, which hath crowned it with the accomplishment of such a precious promise as here lies before us. While none can withdraw from, much less oppose, this service, but such as bear evil will to Zion, and would be unwilling to see the ruin and downfall of Antichrist, which this blessed covenant doth so evidently threaten. Fourthly, this hath been the practice of all the churches of God before and since Christ, after their apostasies and captivities, for those apostasies, and recovering out of these captivities, the first thing they did was to cement themselves to God by a more close, entire, and solemn covenant than ever. Nehemiah, Ezra, Hezekiah, Jeremiah, Josiah will all bring in clear evidences to witness this practice. This latter churches have learned of them, Germany, France, Scotland. But what shall I need to mention the churches, when as the God of the churches took this course himself, who, when he pleases to become the God of any people or person, it is by covenant, as with Abraham, quote, behold, I make a covenant with thee, unquote. And whatever mercies he bestows upon them, it is by covenant. All the blessings of God's people are covenant blessings. To wicked men, God gives with his left hand out of the basket of common providence. But to his saints he dispenseth with his right hand out of the ark of the covenant. Quote, I will make an everlasting covenant with you, even the sure mercies of David, unquote. Yea, which is yet more to our purpose, when the first covenant proved not, but miscarried, not by any fault that was in the covenant maker, no, nor simply in the covenant itself, for if man could have kept it, it would have given him life. I say, when it was broken, God makes a new covenant with his people, quote, not according to the covenant which I made with their fathers, which my covenant they break, but this shall be the covenant. I will put my law in their inward parts, and write it in their hearts, and will be their God, and they shall be my people, unquote. Because they could not keep the first covenant, God made a second that should keep them. Oh, that while we are making a covenant with our God, he would please to make such a covenant with us. So would it be indeed a, quote, perpetual covenant that should not be forgotten. Well, you see, we have a covenanting God, a covenant-making God, and a covenant-renewing God. Be we, quote, followers of God as dear children, unquote. Let us be a covenanting people, a covenant-making, a covenant-renewing people. And as our God, finding fault with the first, let us make a, quote, new covenant, even a perpetual covenant that shall never be forgotten, unquote. A fifth motive to quicken us to this duty may be even the practice of the anti-Christian state and kingdom. Popery hath been dexterous to propagate and spread itself by this means. What else have been all their fraternities and brotherhoods and societies, but so many associations and combinations politic, compacted and obliged by oaths and covenants for the advancing of the Catholic cause, whereby nations and kingdoms have been subdued to the obedience of the Roman mitre? And prelacy, that whelp, hath learned this policy of its mother papacy, that lioness, to corroborate and raise itself to that height. We have seen and suffered by these artifices, while, by close combinations among themselves, and swearing to their obedience, all the inferior priesthood and church officers, by ordination engagements, and oaths of canonical obedience, a few have been able to impose their own laws and canons upon a whole kingdom, yea, upon 3 kingdoms, it being an inconsiderable company, either of ministers or people. The Lord be merciful to us in this thing, that have had eyes to discover the mystery of iniquity, which these men have driven, and much more inconsiderable, that have had hearts to oppose and withstand their tyranny and usurpations. And why may not God make use of the same stratagem to ruin their kingdom, which they use to build it? Yea, God hath seemed to do it already, while in that place where they cast that roaring cannon, and formed their cursed oath, for the establishing their Babel prelacy, and its endless perpetuity, in the very same place hath this covenant been debated and voted, once and a second time, by command of public authority, for the extirpation of it root and branch, and the casting of it out forever, as a plant which, quote, our heavenly Father hath not planted, unquote. And who knows but this may be the arrow of the Lord's deliverance, which, as it hath pierced to the very heart of prelacy, so it may also give a mortal wound to the papacy itself, of which it will never be healed by the whole college of physicians, the Jesuits, who study the complexion and health of that Babylonian harlot. In the sixth and last place, the good success this course hath found in the churches may encourage us with much cheerfulness and confidence to undertake this service. It hath upon it a probatum est from all that ever conscientiously and religiously used this remedy. It recovered the state and church of the Jews again and again, many a time. When it was ready to give up the ghost, it recovered and kept a good correspondency between God and them, all the time it was of any esteem and credit amongst them. It brings letters of testimonial with it from all the Reformed churches, especially from our neighbour nation and Church of Scotland, where it hath done wonders in recovering that people, when all the physicians in Christendom hath given them over. It is very remarkable. God promiseth to bring them, quote, into the bond of the covenant, unquote. And in the next verse it follows, quote, and I will purge out the rebels from among you, unquote. There is an and that couples this duty and this mercy together. Quote, I will bring you into the bond, unquote. Quote, and I will purge out, unquote. The walls of Jericho have fallen flat before it. The Dagon of the bishop's service book broke its neck before this ark of the covenant. Prelacy and prerogative have bowed down and given up the ghost at its feet. What a reformation hath followed at the heels of this glorious ordinance! And truly, even among us, as poor and lamely and brokenly as it hath been managed among us, I am confident we had given up the ghost before this time, had it not been for this water of life. Oh, what glorious success might we expect, if we did make such cheerful, such holy, such conscientious addresses as become the law of so solemn an ordinance. Truly could I see such a willing people in this day of God's power, as are here in the text, encouraging and engaging one another in an holy conspiracy, quote, come, let us join ourselves to the Lord in a perpetual covenant, unquote. I have faith enough to promise and prophesy to you in the name of the Lord and in the words of his prophet Haggai, quote, from this very day I will bless you, unquote. And that you may know of what sovereignty this ordinance is, take notice of this, that this is the last physic that ever the church shall take or need. It lies clear in the text, for it is an everlasting covenant, and therefore the last that ever shall be made. After the full and final accomplishment of this promise and duty, the church shall be of so excellent a complexion that, quote, the inhabitants shall not say, I am sick, the people that dwell therein shall be forgiven their iniquity, unquote. The Lord make it such physic to us for Christ's sake.